Hi, my name's Paul Grogan, and in this Gaming Rules Quick and Dirty review, I'm going to be telling you what I think about Underwater Cities, designed by Vladimir Suchy, published by Delicious Games, and was released at Essen Spiel 2018, and I believe is going to be picked up by Rio Grande Games and should be available in most places in 2019. Now, what do I think about the game? Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you very much for watching. Now, let's go into a bit more detail of why I love it so much. This is one of the best games, in my opinion, that was released last year. I have now played it 4 times and I am itching to play it again just because I enjoy the experience of playing it so much. What is the game about? Well, it's about building, believe it or not, underwater cities. And I don't normally cover any of the rules of the game in these videos. This is literally just my thoughts about the game, but I've had some feedback on previous videos that you would like me to explain a little bit about it. So the game takes place over 10 rounds. There is a production phase 3 times during the game, and basically you're trying to get as many victory points as you can, and you will do that by building up your underwater cities, taking actions on the board, which is kind of a worker placement mechanic. But one of the clever twists in this game is you will be doing so with a hand of cards. So let's say I have some cards in my hand. There are action spaces on the board. You will see that there's green, red, and there is orange. And basically, I've got 4 cards, that's cheating. If you play a card which matches the colour of the space, see the cards are all coloured as well, then you also get the bonus action on the card. And this leads me on to one of the first things that I really like about the game, and that is the decision space. So almost always you want to go, right, I've got this green card here, I want to play it on a green space because then you'll get the bonus that's printed on it. But not always. For example, in this hand of cards, I currently don't have a red card in my hand, and let's say there is a red action that I really need to perform. Well, there is the decision, is do you take that action and therefore not get the bonus of the card, or do you do something different in the hope that you will draw a red card? Now, the other thing with the cards that I really like is at the start of your turn, you may have more than 3 cards in your hand, and you discard down to 3. So there's a number of ways in the game that you can actually draw extra cards, and you might even start the round with 6 cards in your hand, or 7. And basically you have until the start of your next turn to discard down to 3 and then decide. So it allows players, it does reduce the amount of analysis paralysis, or AP, in the, okay, I'm over my hand size, but you don't discard at the end of the round, at the end of your turn. No, you wait until the start of your next turn, by which time you've had a bit of a time to think, and then you go, right, these are the 3 cards I'm going to keep, discard the rest, and off I go. So that's a really interesting sort of tweak on the normal rules of discard down at the end of your turn. Now, I mentioned the worker placement mechanic on the main board. Basically, you're going to be using these tiles here to place them on the spaces and then perform the action of that space. And you always get to perform the action of the space. It's just the card ability. You only get to do that if the colour matches. And there's quite a few different actions in the game. The player interaction is minimal, and it is normally, it's like your normal worker placement games where, you know, other people will be taking the spots that you take, which means you need to have a backup plan. So before it gets to your turn, you should always think about, right, well, I really want to do that, but I also need to be thinking about where to go if somebody else does that as well. The game plays 2 to 4 players. The box time says 40 minutes per player. Now, one of the cons of this game, one of the disadvantages of this game is the playtime. You're looking at probably 3.5 to 4 hours for your first game. It is a meaty, complex game. There's a lot going on. It's a big rule book. The first time I played, we got a couple of rules wrong. They're very, very clear in the rule book, but because we were learning from the rule book, we missed those couple of points in there. But yeah, there's a lot of rules in there. So your first game is going to be long. I have now played a 3-player game of this in 90 minutes. And 90 minutes, for me, is not a long game. So I know the internet's going to go crazy with a lot of people saying, oh my God, the game's way too long. 3-player game, 90 minutes? Sorry, that's not long. I could probably play a 4-player game of this in probably 2 hours, maybe just over 2 hours. And for a game of this depth and complexity, that's absolutely fine for me. I remember games like Great Western Trail and Terraforming Mars also getting criticism when they came out for being excessively long. And I've heard some people saying it about this game. And as I say, your first game might be a bit long, but it will speed up. Now, going back to the rulebook. Rulebook is really well written. I know the person who wrote it is a guy called Jason Holt. He does all of the rulebooks for Czech Games Edition. I'm not saying that it's really good just because I'm friends with Jason. It is really good. Now, one of the criticisms that I've heard about the rulebook is it does repeat itself on a number of occasions. I think about 4 or 5 times in the first sort of opening pages, it says, on your turn, you play a card and perform an action. And you get the action of the card and you get the action of the space, and it says that multiple times. But other than that, very clear. There's only one bit about the game which I felt wasn't entirely clear, and that's to do with these government contract cards, which are optional. But other than that, extremely good. The iconography in the game, there's a lot of it. And if you're relatively new to gaming, then this game might be a little bit too much for you anyway, but the iconography might put some people off. For an experienced gamer like myself, and for many other people probably watching this video, the iconography is fine, it's very clear. There's a few points in the game which need clarification, but one thing that's really nice is on most of the cards there is text at the bottom of the card to also explain what the action does. There's one space which I felt the iconography was slightly misleading and incorrect, and it turns out that I'd misunderstood that action. And once I understood the action, the iconography was very clear. So yeah, graphic design wise, I really like it. It's very clear. Everything about the game, the different colours, the different icons and everything else, as I say, once you've got over that first game, all extremely clear and very intuitive. And as I mentioned, the rulebook's good. Now, other things about the components. Generally speaking, the components are fine. There's a couple of problems. The first one is the player boards. The player boards are a bit thin. Everybody's saying this. Is it a problem? Not really. It would have been nice if they're card, but you know, it's fine. It's not that big of a problem. The biggest problem with the game are these 3 tokens. Now, these are awful. I can see what they've done. They've decided to make the 3 token basically look like a pile of 3 ones. The problem is it looks so much like a pile of 3 ones. If you have these mixed in with the ones, you try to pick one up and it's a 3. Now, the publisher has admitted there was way too many 3s and not enough 1s, and they are fixing that in the new version of the game. So yeah, apart from that components issue, the rest of it is really nice. These domes are really nice, even though the rulebook keeps referring to these as purple, and they're not, they're red, and I don't know if the intention was that they're supposed to be purple, but that's absolutely fine. I think the player aids in the game are also really good. They are on the thin paper again, and it does look like there's just a huge amount of icons on there. But again, if you're teaching the game and you go through this player aid, it is all on there and it does make a lot of sense. So yeah, really good, very, very clear, just on thin paper, but very useful. Now, what else do I like about the game? Because there's so much to talk about. There are endgame scoring cards, and there are 6 of them chosen at random at the start of the game, and they will never be replaced. And you can take them at any time in the game. And that's one of the interesting decisions, because they only score at the end of the game, but you might want to take one early because somebody else might be going for the same thing. So it's a really interesting, because when you take one, it goes into your hand. And remember, you have to discard down to 3 cards at the start of your turn. So you don't want to play it and then it sit in your hand for ages. You've got to, you want to play it as soon as possible, even though it's only going to kick in at the end of the game. There are other cards as well. There are other special cards which you can pick up, and these are better versions of the normal cards. And you have to go onto one particular space to pick these up. And these cost a credit to play, or 2 credits for the really good ones. So those cards are really good. The cards themselves, I believe they're all unique. Now, there's a lot of similarities between the cards. It's not that you're going to have to learn hundreds of cards, but every single one is unique. I like the artwork. I like the way that the cards work. There's various discussions about some of them being slightly overpowered, but overall, I think they're really good. Scalability in the game, it does take 2 to 4 players. It actually takes 1 to 4 players. There is a solo mode included in the game. But the game, I feel, does scale quite well. You use the other side of the board when you're playing with 2 or 3 players. When you're playing with 2 players. With 4 players, you use this side of the board, and there's an extra tile which basically allows you to copy the space of another player, which is quite essential in a 4-player game. And that's quite a common thing that's used in a lot of worker placement games these days. Another thing that I like about the game is the turn order track and the way that this works. Basically, you will gain these federation points and you will move up and down this track. You'll move up this track, and then at the end of each round, you will reset the turn order based on this track. So it isn't just simply, oh, I'm going to go there to become the first player. You actually move up this track, which gets you other bonuses, and that decides the turn order for the next round. Just a really clever little mechanic that I quite like. Another of the decisions that you're going to have to make in the game is how you're going to build your underwater cities together, because you have quite a lot of choice. Now, you need to keep an eye on the end goal. Basically, your cities at the end of the game, for each one that you have, will score you points depending on how many different types of buildings are in there. And if you've got all 3 different buildings within that city, then that's going to score 6 points. But when we get to production, you're going to get a bonus for if you have 2 buildings of the same type. So it's like, now you're going to be driven by that decision by some of the cards that you will pick up that might give you bonuses for doing certain things. And also you will get these metropolises, which are basically random tiles that were dealt to you at the start of the game, but that might give you some direction in the game, especially this one, which is the brown-backed one. This will give you basically points at the end of the game if you've connected it for doing certain things. So that's going to give you a little bit of direction in the game. And if that tells you that you want to have cities with all 3 buildings in, then that's going to influence your decision on what you do even more. But there's lots of different strategies in the game. I've seen somebody go really seriously into kelp farming and that do really well. I've seen somebody go for lots of desalination plants and I've seen that work. This is a game which, at the moment, after my 4 plays, I feel is quite balanced, just because there's so many different things you can do and there's different ways of playing it. Who knows? It's a game I do want to play a lot more. As I say, it's one of my favourite games that came out in 2018. It may well be my favourite game of last year. I don't yet know. There's a few contenders for that, which I am going to probably decide at the end of this year maybe. But yeah, this is definitely high up there. This is Underwater Cities. This video was created thanks to my Patreon campaign. This game was voted on by my patrons as one of the games that you wanted me to review this month. So thank you very much to all of my patrons for making this video possible. And if you like this video and some of the other content that I make, then please consider supporting me over at patreon.com/gaming rules. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching. Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.